Are you concerned about your financial future? Well, as owner of hundreds of residential rental units, I would have to say that I am. And while no one can credibly claim to know the future, history does leave clues. In Understanding Economic Cycles Part 1, I described a classic business cycle that lasts, on average, about 5.5 years. In Part 2, we looked at the possibility of a coming cataclysmic, once-in-a-lifetime generational wealth shift and what you can do to protect yourself from it. In this video, Part 3, I will tell you about an 18.6-year cycle that has driven the rhythm of real estate for well over 2 centuries. Please understand that all real estate markets have local influences, and the information I'm about to share with you is not my opinion. I will give you all of my sources both in this video and in the description below so you can do your own research. And if you choose to agree, disagree, question, or comment, I would love for you to do that in the space below. I will share with you this one observation, however. I see all 3 economic cycles converging in a major market crash sometime in about 5 years. Oh, by the way, I have learned that using the word crash in a YouTube video tends to generate a few more clicks. But don't miss this. Economic cycles, by virtue of definition, include both troughs and peaks. What that means is that we probably have another 4 or 5 years of expansion before any kind of a crash. So, where does this 18.6-year cycle come from? Well, in 1776, this man, Adam Smith, wrote a book called The Wealth of Nations. Well, the title was a lot longer and it wasn't a book, it was actually several volumes, but you get the idea. In 1809, this guy, David Ricardo, was so inspired by Adam Smith's work that he came up with his theory of economic rents. I'm no David Ricardo, but I can tell you that the theory of rents basically describes the surplus value of land given equal inputs of labor and capital. Modern day investors think of this as locational value. Private ownership of land is permitted through a government-granted license called title. The most fertile land, or land with greatest density, carries the highest value. While the factors of production are land, labor, and capital, all of the benefit goes to the landowner, until it doesn't. Eventually, the tenants can no longer afford or no longer tolerate ever-increasing rents. How often does that happen? Well, about once every 18 years, at least according to this young man, Homer Hoyt. In 1933, he published 100 Years of Land Values in Chicago. While his focus of his research was on the city of Chicago, it was truly representative of cities in all developed countries. Although Homer Hoyt is considered the father of the 18-year cycle, around the same time, another man, Roy Wenslick of St. Louis, independently assembled data from over 120 other US cities, also identifying an 18-year cycle. In 1936, he published The Coming Boom in Real Estate and What to Do About It. It was just 48 pages in length. In 1947, Dewey and Dakin dug deeper into understanding cycles with their work entitled Cycles, the Science of Prediction. This hand-drawn chart spanning from 1795 to 1958 is originally their work. Others have updated it to present day with remarkable rhythmic accuracy. For over 200 years, real estate cycles have repeated in times of inflation or deflation, whether interest rates are high or low, with or without trade barriers, with government subsidies, and with high, low, or no taxes. So let's jump to present day. This is Fred Harrison. Harrison's economic predictive powers relating to this 18-year cycle are well documented in his publications. The Power in the Land, 1983, Boom Bust, 2005, and Ricardo's Law, 2006. Spoiler alert, Harrison believes our current cycle will peak right around 2026. Are you still with me? Here's how the 18-year cycle works. 14 years up, interrupted by a mid-cycle dip, and then 4 years down. This cycle has reliably repeated itself over and over again for well over 200 years, really only ever disrupted by 2 world wars. This chart is borrowed from an online article posted by Property Geek back in 2019. You can find a link to the article and a free online course on the 18-year cycle from Property Hub in the description below. I have no affiliation with either. The secret to profiting from this information isn't just understanding the cycle, it's finding reliable ways to predict where on that cycle we might be. That's where this book comes in handy, The Secret Life of Real Estate and Banking by Philip Anderson. It took me a while to track down this book, but it was worth the wait. Philip Anderson and his organization, Property Share Market Economics, probably have the most reliable and up-to-date information on the 18.6-year cycle today. While they're based in Australia, the focus of their work is Western economies. Anderson says that a study of US history reveals a very clear average 18.6-year cycle in credit and real estate prices measured from peak to peak or from trough to trough. That cycle has never been shorter than 17 years and never longer than 21. If you're paying attention, you may have noticed that I've shown you an 18-year cycle and then an 18.3-year cycle and now this 18.6-year cycle. Well, it seems that over time, the cycle has been gradually, ever so gradually growing in length. And the highs and the lows are becoming more extreme, meaning that an upcoming crash is likely to be severe. So, where are we today? Here's a chart from Property Share Market Economics. The story begins following the devastation of the Great Recession. The yellow dot represents the date this chart was published. Nobody could have predicted a pandemic. What they could have and did predict was that, like clockwork, there would be a mid-cycle slowdown. Something always causes a faltering of confidence mid-cycle. The first shaded blue area shows the US election campaign and Brexit, followed by looser monetary policy and then huge infrastructure spending. Sound familiar? 5 or so years of expansion culminate in an era of very easy money and announcement of a new world's tallest building. This is the way the cycle always plays out. The last part of the expansion, where the line begins to slope up dramatically, probably around 2024-25, is called the winner's curse. This is when everybody knows all the problems of the world are finally forever solved and real estate goes up forever. But it doesn't. Hey, are you finding this helpful so far? If so, please give us a like. Now, here are some key takeaways from The Secret Life of Real Estate and Banking. All cycles have the same characteristics, but different influences. If they were exactly the same, life would be a little bit too easy. Governments cannot create or suppress real estate cycles. It's credit created by banks through our fractional reserve banking system that fuels the real estate cycle. Each recession, new rules and regulations are placed upon our banking institutions with the intent of stopping problems and preventing abuses. And in every upturn, new ways are found to profit by exploiting those loopholes in those same rules and regulations. Residential real estate is first to recover from a downturn. The mid-cycle slowdown that we might be in or emerging from right now confuses us. The 18.6-year cycle is so long that few people remember what it was like last time. And when market expansion resumes quickly, it's easy for us to think, well, everything is fine. But the coming downturn is much worse than the mid-cycle slowdown. In the final years of a real estate cycle, the authorities congratulate themselves on how well they're managing things. Besides, if banks believe that governments are going to bail them out anyway, why bother being prudent in lending? Eventually, Seeing huge returns of others, the masses rush into real estate investing, believing it never goes down, until fear overtakes greed. Land values peak about 12 to 24 months before a recession. A peak in the building cycle usually follows but precedes the recession. Announcement of the next world's tallest building may well be the most reliable indicator of an approaching peak. Copper prices spike in the last years of each real estate cycle, and every recession since 1960 has been preceded by an inverted yield curve. The turning point in a real estate cycle is often the collapse or near collapse of a major bank. At any rate, there'll be some event that creates doubt. But don't worry, you'll hear lots of reassurances from the authorities that everything's just fine. The coming crash is always in the environment of rising interest rates, and the first to trough is always the stock market because of its much greater liquidity. Investors, speculators, and homeowners with little equity at the end of a cycle will be wiped out, always. Finally, recovery takes years, not months, and historically prices have fallen 20 to 30% off of their previous peaks. My friend David Benthall once told me, wealthy families make their money in business and store it in real estate. If that's what you're up to, you'll probably be fine. I've often said that real estate developers or speculators eventually go bankrupt on their last deal. According to Philip Anderson, history reveals that investors who made land speculation their sole business enterprise have rarely held on to their profits. The cycle usually wiped them out in the end. Those who had real businesses with real earnings and real cash flow, who purchased real estate with their profits but did not speculate in it, went on to make a fortune. Beware of single cycle gurus. Anybody who has discovered or developed a system within the last 10 or even 20 years may be setting you up for failure. Here are some words to the wise from Dewey and Dakin way back in 1947. The business cycle is so long that few people experience 2 complete cycles in their business life. Education, to be effective, must therefore be book knowledge rather than just experience. For many individuals, an unfavorable first experience means a lifetime tragedy. The welfare of an individual is often determined by the time in which he was born. If he is old enough to start business at the low of a business cycle, which is accompanied by rising prices, his chances for success are very good. Conversely, if he is born at such a date that he starts business at the peak of a building cycle, which is accompanied by falling commodity prices, his chances of success are small. Much of the success or failure of an individual is due to forces over which he has no control. But if he understands these forces, he may protect himself from the worst results of unfavorable combinations and profit personally from favorable combinations. Make no mistake, the concentration of wealth is more and more in the hands of fewer and fewer. Expect President Joe Biden to do all he can to pump money into the US economy, increase lending, keep interest rates low, and government spending high. Real estate prices will continue to rise until people can no longer afford them anymore. The 18.6-year cycle is pointing to a collapse around the year 2025 or 2026. I see a convergence of all 3 cycles, and I'll be looking for appreciation over the next few years and planning to exit any holdings where I don't have considerable equity and strong cash flow, probably around the next presidential election year, 2024. Remember, all real estate markets are local, so you'll need to consider this 18.6-year cycle within the context of your local market. Nobody can ever know the future for sure, but if you're going to invest, you should at least have some sort of model that can point you towards profits and steer you away from dangers. That's how understanding economic cycles can help. My objective in this video series on economic cycles was to stimulate intelligent thought. I'm Jeff Gunther. Making money is simple, but life can be hard. For more great content, please subscribe to this YouTube channel. And even if you've never done so before, would you please share this video? It's easy. Just click on the share button.